So,
We're waiting with bated breath.
yeah, well, do we,
Craig said he would be, stopped by yesterday just to check on something. He said he would be here, but it's at your pleasure.
okay, all right, we can start.
Good.
Kathy, you want to lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first thing on our agenda is public comment. Public is welcome to comment on items on the agenda or not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comments? Not seeing any, we'll go to the consent calendar. Are there any items that people would like to pull from the consent calendar for discussion? We have the minutes of February 21st, the February 2018 retirement report, and the monthly preliminary financial report.
Very nice to see the agenda published out there in the Melco. Nice job.
No more taping it up on the board.
Yeah.
I printed it.
We still got Bruce again.
No,
Mine does.
shouldn't be, no.
Bruce Moore.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay.
It does?
Yeah, I noticed that. I thought, 'cause I
Well,
know
if
who he
there's
is.
no objection, will the consent calendar be approved?
Oh, automatically.
Okay, next thing we have is discussion and possible action regarding the investment matters monthly investment report, number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustees, you have the monthly investment report from Callan in your packet. As expected, there's a lot of red in the report. We knew it was going to be a month with this result based on the volatility we saw in the investment markets. There is no change reflected in the real estate as those only reflect, or those only update on the quarter end. So there will be some changes in that in the quarterly report potentially. You can see that we were down $15.9 million in market value from investment returns. We did have a $1 million withdrawal in cash for paying benefits and expenses. Turning to page 3 of the report, every manager in the equity space was negative for the month. And the only, on page 4, everyone there is negative except for the real estate, which obviously we're not seeing reports. On total, the fund was down 2.95% for the month, matching the benchmark. Not reflected here, but calculations that we track, we are still up year to date, just over 9% for fiscal year to date. So still in the range above our expected rate of return for the fiscal year. And obviously over the very long term, which is what we pay attention to, we're well north of the 7% mark that we expect. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that anyone has.
I was just trying to add, and I probably have not noticed this in the past, but the domestic equities apparently are aligned by themselves, and then everything else is added to the total fund at the bottom.
So are you referring to page 2?
I'm referring to page 2.
Okay, so the domestic equities,
What's
that line, the 207 million, includes the large cap equity category, the 145.9 million,
Okay.
the mid cap equities, 31.2, and the small cap equities, the 30.4.
So
Okay.
that is just a subtotal.
That is correct.
The way it's presented, I couldn't tell that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And the net new investments, I mean, I understand investment return, of course, but the net new investments with the decrease of $1 million net, we pulled $1 million out?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. If we have money to put into the fund for investment purposes, it would show up here as a positive. If we withdraw money for paying benefits and expenses, it shows up in that column as a negative.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, when we pull cash to pay benefits, one of the things that Stan does on a monthly basis in terms of pulling cash is look at our target asset allocation and see which area we're over allocation, and then we focus on pulling cash from that area, so we're always slightly nudging ourselves back towards the target asset allocation.
Good, thank you.
And our real estate, even if we were at the end of a quarter, it lags a quarter, right?
I don't believe it lags a quarter. Stan, real estate reporting does not lag a quarter in its reporting. It's just, we only get a report on the quarter end.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting, because it always lagged a quarter at CalSTRS.
We're not lagging a quarter, but it does, the report, we only get the report, it's like 40 days after the quarter end. So that's, we won't have it for the April meeting.
Okay,
We hope to have it for the May meeting, and the only reason we say May is because the May meeting is early in the month because of moving it for Sackers.
okay.
So,
Well, along those lines, so how often do you guys rebalance the fund? Because it just looks like maybe the international equities went down by a higher percentage than the domestic.
so we do the slight nudge rebalancing every time we raise cash. As far as a major rebalancing, we don't do that often. We did some of that when we reviewed the asset categories and we hired and fired managers. You'll recall the board did asset allocation 2 years ago. There were some changes involved with that, and we did we moved funds to match the new asset allocation. By investment policy, a true rebalancing would only be triggered if we got more than 3 percentage points outside of the target. And that would involve, selling assets out of, for example, mid-cap equities and moving it into international equities or fixed income. We don't do it that often because we have bands that are relatively wide. For that purpose, you don't want to be so tightly managing this that you're always having to do trades to stay close. So we let it run a little.
Any other questions or comments on the monthly report? Any public comments on the monthly report?
It was a lot more fun seeing it go up every month.
They'll go back up.
You don't like red.
No.
Okay, so then we're on to discussion and possible action regarding the potential 2019 legislative platform, appointments of alternate trustees, and cost of living adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustees, you have before you a small memo.
A reality check.
Discussing, trying to really wrap everything up around this, the legislative platform that the board has talked about pursuing, and the two specific issues being the appointed alternate trustee and the cost of living adjustment. I think I might have described the process of creating this memo as a birthing process because it really felt like that. It was very long and involved, and there might have been some pain going through it. But in the end, it was enjoyable, and I'm glad we got to where we are.
If you think
So-
this is like very.
It's definitely a
I would
male
be
point
at
of
this
view.
table might not agree with it.
I didn't claim to be intelligent. So, You have the memo. I'm going to assume that all of you have read it. I'll be happy to answer questions, and I think it'd just be productive to answer questions and have general discussion, Mr. Chairman. That'd be my suggestion.
Did you have anything to add?
Well, I'll just throw out a couple of comments. I see two issues. One of them is a policy one, and it's not for me to comment on, and that is this really legislation for this board, or is it really more for the Board of Supervisors?
I'm assuming you're talking to the appointed alternate legislation.
Oh, I'm sorry, were you talking about the CPI first?
Well, we have both.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I was taking them in order of the
No,
memo,
that's
so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the alternate position.
Just trying to be clear.
Thank you. The legal issue is, as James has described in the memo, is Prop 162 passed by the voters in 1992, and it has a provision about not changing the board. And so you saw that one 37 Act system, one county, has made the change without going to a vote of the county. And I think they concluded, like some of the systems, that changing, having an alternate, this one was an alternate retiree, was not a substantive change because the number of trustees remain the same. And there's an Attorney General opinion that supports that, saying that as long as you're not changing the total number, you don't need to have a vote of the people. The only thing I'll mention is, in that situation, they were adding an alternate retired member. And so they went back to the purpose of Prop 162 and the intent at the time, which of course is very interesting. It's a very different dynamic than today's world. It might be interesting to just, I highlighted a couple of quotes from the proponents of that initiative back in 1992. Do you believe politicians should be able to raise the pension funds of retirees? It's not right to allow politicians to balance their budgets on the backs of seniors and retirees. And, times have certainly changed, and now there's questions about sustainability and all that. And I'm not trying to pass judgment, I'm just trying to explain that the Attorney General's opinion on that issue said that adding a retired alternate is consistent with Prop 162. There are some who would argue that trying to add an alternate for board appointees might be seen as opposite of that. So if somebody were trying to make an argument that you can't do that, that's one thing that they would make. We're certainly being very transparent here. I mean, we're not trying to hide anything in closed session or with attorney-client privilege. So, I don't know if there's any strong reaction from the unions or from the retirees on this kind of an issue. I think the risks are probably pretty small to do it without a vote of the people, but there is some risk there. So that's my little summary on the first, what I call the first issue, the alternate member proposal.
Not having been here in June and having read your memo, I mean, it's an arduous process to do this, and I've been through some legislative proposals in the past. So I just am questioning, what was the intent? What happened? Why, what are we looking for, and why are we looking for this?
And I don't remember.
No.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think this, the idea of the appointed alternate was put forward, I believe, by the individual that used to sit in your seat. And it was an effort to address the perceived lack of balance between members of the system on this board versus non-members of the system on this board. And it was also partly in response to some legislation that was enacted last year that gives the alternate retiree some additional voting options. And that was done, I believe that was proposed by, was that a CRCEA proposal?
I think it started there.
Yeah. So what that legislation did, so with our retiree alternate, the alternate retiree can vote if the retiree member is absent. The new legislation allows the alternate retiree to vote if the retiree member is present and 2 elected members of the board are absent.
That's interesting.
And the elected members of the board are, and I can't remember seat numbers, so I'm just gonna go with Catherine, Patrick, and Craig. So if Tim were here and 2 of those 3 were absent, Richard could vote. So that had been enacted as of last June. There is a perception running around that there is an imbalance on this board of members in the plan versus non-members in the plan, with the alternate retiree being a member of the plan, having some additional ability to vote. There was the suggestion that maybe the appointed members of this board should also have an alternate.
But if the appointed members also had an alternate, there's no indication that they would vote if one of the appointed members were absent, or were present, I'm sorry.
Right. The only time that an appointed alternate would vote is if one of the appointed members was absent.
So the makeup of the board is always going to be majority members,
That is
no
correct.
matter what.
That is correct.
So I don't see what benefit this alternate has. Okay, then I say why spend time on it?
Yep.
You know, that sort of presupposes that board members from various appointment directions have a different allegiance
Mhm.
than what our charge is to be the fiduciaries of the members.
Yes.
And so if you accept the fact that we're all here to do our duty as we are assigned that duty, then I don't see any need for this. And I've seen nothing in my short tenure here that suggests that the board operates as in a factional way. That the board functions as it was intended to from what I've seen in just the year that I've been here. So I agree with Kathy, I don't see a problem to solve.
Yeah, and I was gonna echo that. I don't have any opposition to it, but I also don't know if it's something that we need to take up here on our own, but I don't necessarily see the need, but it also seems like from reading it that it would be a pretty complicated endeavor, maybe something more for the Board of Supervisors to be involved in.
Yeah, and I agree that I think the board should take this up if they want to do this. These are their appointees. One of the other issues, as far as what James said, when this started coming up, there were some issues of attendance too, I believe, where there were people that were not present. And so I think that was part of where the whole discussion came from, was that if some people aren't here, like retiree member, they still have a vote at the table. But I mean, there's been times, it doesn't happen very often, but there's been times where we've had maybe 5, 6 people that are voting on really important issues. And so I think that's one of the reasons when it came up. Yeah.
Okay, so this will, if it gets taken up, it'll be taken up by the board of supervisors. Okay, item number 2.
Turning to the cost of living adjustment proposal. I tried to give you a brief history on where we are and what's happened, and the current language, and provide some historical perspective on the CPI over time from 2011 to 17. And then ran into the buzzsaw that is the Bureau of Labor Statistics and their major overhaul of their geographies beginning in 2018. So all of that leads to, at the bottom of page 7, what I've called the preliminary recommendations. And they are preliminary because it's a fork in the road, if you will. If I have some, the recommendation there is that given a broader interpretation of the statute, which our legal counsel has agreed we can take, we have a larger menu of options before us, but we have no history with those options. And I would not feel like I could recommend which option to choose. So, given that we have a larger menu of options, I don't think we need to take a legislative approach to fix this. What I think we need is 5 years of data to do an analysis. And until we do that, my recommendation is we stick with the process as we've defined it, and then push the analysis, the reanalysis of the region from 2021 out to 2023, so that we have 5 years of data. So, and if the board disagrees with that, then there's the follow-up, which is potential language changes we can consider and so on and so forth. So that's why I call these preliminary, because it's not there are other recommendations if you want to continue down the road here.
So thank you for all the research on this. I do tend to agree that I don't think there really is a need for a legislative remedy anymore. It seems like there are more options. One option that I did see in here that you raised was the Pacific Region's CPI, which is an actual BLS CPI. So I thought that might be something good. And when I am concerned about pushing it out further, especially 5 years forward. That is quite a ways off, because data appears to be available online from the feds. Last night I looked, and you can match up the Western region, Pacific region, you can look at San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, and you can look back 5 years right now previously, which would allow us to get the data that we need to make that assessment without actually having to wait. And that might be something, because when I looked at it, at least briefly, I know in your analysis it said the last 5 years is when the real change was in between the performance in these different regions and CPIs. With the actual rental data and more precise what we needed, it looked like the Pacific region matches up better than the Western region, and that might offer an option that wasn't there before. But.
So there is no history on the Pacific region from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in a consumer price index.
Mm-hmm.
That does not exist. That series began in December of 2018 or 2017. So there's no history that I can look at there.
What I was getting at is, because we had determined that shelter was the main crux of the difference between these, is that the U.S. Census Bureau has all of the data for median rents for Mendocino County, for the West region, the Pacific region. They've already tracked that data. So instead of having to build our own from bottom up like you had to do last time, you can literally just click the boxes and it creates a table for you. So that's what I looked at. And that might save us having to wait out 5 years to try to get this right. We could try to look at it now.
I have a question. So when you say it matched up better with us, how are you calculating that?
Yeah.
So at least from what I'm seeing is that when you look at rents, before we were trying to use fair market rent, which James looked at later as analysis, but we looked at 2-bedroom, which was a small segment of the rental market, and the demographics are different in each region and area. Then we looked at housing, but housing is also kind of an approximation and didn't really match up. So we're trying to use those two as a proxy for what the actual rent was, or the cost of rental housing. Now all that information is available online in a tool that the feds have put up. So instead of having to build your own database up, you just click, I want to see Mendocino County, I want to see the West, I want to see the Bay. You can look at the new region for the Bay, they do San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward. So it just seems like we can get the data that we need without having to build our own.
Where are we on this? Are we about 2 years in?
Yes, we've.
Out of 5?
We've done, we've used the western region 2 years for calculating the COLA.
Is there concern we're not giving our retirees an adequate COLA?
Well, I'm just concerned with trying to make it the most accurate. I mean, the COLA's worked out pretty similarly this time, but the Pacific region, they've narrowed it down to include California and the other Pacific states, which they split the West in half.
So
we
what
currently have.
are the Pacific states?
It's California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Hawaii.
So Alaska and Hawaii have representative from Mendocino County?
I don't know if they're any more represented than Utah or Colorado or Montana.
Well, but
though,
in the western states, there's not one city in Idaho on the list. There's not one city in Montana on the list. So I mean, even though it includes those states, it's only the most urbanized areas of those most urbanized states in the West. So it's like what, Phoenix, Las Vegas. I mean, it's not like it's, you know, Trailerville, Montana that's getting compared to Mendocino County.
That's where I'm.
My understanding is that when they redid the Pacific region, that now, for instance, Chico, Santa Rosa, they've put in, you know, new areas. The whole thing's redone. I can't speak to what is in each region. I really didn't get that far yesterday, but.
I'm pretty comfortable with what we did and the 5 years of tracking, rather than to think, well, we're part of the way in, let's switch to something else.
Catherine?
Okay, sorry, still questions. As I recall, what was calculated that we saw last meeting was over 3% and 3.14 or something. And so the max COLA is 3%, is that correct? So I assume in history, there's been less than 3% historically on some years. So that's the key to what we're using, right? Is the years when it's calculated out at something less than 3. I mean, is that the concern, that we're not gonna get the maximum?
I think the concern is just trying to get the most accurate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's absolutely my concern, is getting the proper CPI. It has nothing to do with the rates. Zero to do with the rates. It's get the proper CPI.
And then that's assuming that the retirees who are getting that COLA are still in Mendocino County, which most of them are, but not all.
They get it regardless.
Correct,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that if they
Oh,
live
right,
somewhere
right.
else.
It really doesn't affect them, you're
Right,
saying, right,
okay.
right. And I think you've had numbers on that, how many are still here and.
We've produced numbers on that, and I don't recall, the majority of our retirees are still in the county. I can't recall a percentage.
And calculating the CPI or finding the right CPI to use is just a guiding point for this board? Is it mandatory that you choose that CPI for the COLA, whatever one you choose? I mean, or
Are you
is
asking what the
that?
legal test is?
Yeah, I mean, what if you decide you only want to give 1% because you don't have enough money in the fund? I mean, just,
So the legal test is that it has to bear a reasonable relation to the cost of living in Mendocino County. I suppose if all of you had 90% of your retirees living in some other place, maybe we'd have to look at it differently, but you're just trying to find, as some of the trustees have already said, the test is finding the best measurement of the cost of living here.
and if you find that best measurement, are you obligated that that's the COLA? That was-
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, regardless of how much money's in the fund.
that's what I wanted to know.
If I may, real quickly to that point, I will say, your legal counsel will say yes, but I am aware of other counties that do something different.
What do you mean? We don't have a COLA in Sonoma County, so
Curious.
It's not Sonoma County.
No, I know.
There are other counties with a COLA where the board just picks a number.
Well, I've told James this before, but I'll tell all of you, I've got retirement from Colorado, and they promised me when I retired it would be 2% COLA every year, but now they've reduced it to 1.5%. You know, it's after the fact, they've changed it. So, you know, there's a lot of legal process.
The price of pot's gone down.
Actually, Tim,
Yeah, just quick, James, when there's going to be two regions or two, the Pacific and the Western region within the Western Regional, do we have to pick one or the other, or how is that going to work? Are they going to, I assume they'll have a CPI for each one of the two regions?
So the Western region will continue to be produced. The Pacific and the Mountain sub-regions are brand new, so they started December 2017, and we'll start from that point and move forward only. And I would go back to the legal test, to your question of which we have to use. We have to, the guidance is we need to use that which we think best reflects the cost of living, the consumer price index, if you will, in Mendocino County. And we are using the consumer price index for urban consumers, but that price index is specifically targeting urban consumers, which this is not an urban area, but that's what we're using because that's what's available to us, is the CPIU, or some derivative thereof, I will say. The design of the BLS is for the CPIU to cover approximately, or not the design, their geographic design, it covers approximately 85% of the US population by targeting the urban areas. We're outside of that 85%, but it's still the best measure available to us. We just don't know which one, whether it be the New Bay Area, the Pacific region, California, the Western states. We don't have an idea of that yet.
But we voted to use the Western region for the next 5 years. So
For 3 more years, right?
do we have to make a decision now because there's two sub-index?
I don't believe you do because the Western region still exists.
We'll still have one?
Yes, the Western region does still exist. And I know I've not answered your question.
That's okay.
The wheels are still turning, so.
Catherine and Jerry.
I have two things. Kathy, for the Colorado retirement, do they give a justification for reducing the COLA for your?
Just that they're gonna go bankrupt if they,
Just to give, yeah.
the resources.
The other thing is, I think it's distracting to, when we talk about the CPI, to say, well, you know, the cost of living in this area or that area, when in fact, we're basing the COLA on the difference from year to year, not the actual cost of living. So it's a ratio, it's a, you know, so we need to be clear on that and see if, you know, okay, the cost of living is way higher in the Bay Area, but from year to year, what is the difference? And we're not having that much of a discussion about that. So I think it's something to focus on.
I just have a few comments on this. I think, and I don't know if this is possible, and it's probably not. It's very political. We've had half of the Sackers counties that have been within a CPI and half that have not. So those half that are in it they just pick the one they're in. That's pretty straightforward. The other half have been scrambling and it's been political. Now what's going to happen is you're going to have more that are going to possibly be outside of that CPI, although Sonoma County doesn't have one. They're going to be outside that COLA. The other thing I think is that because of what's happened with PEPRA, where, like our county, for instance, if you were hired January 1, 2013 or thereafter, you have no COLA. This issue is going to get more and more and more polarized, I believe, as we move forward because of those things.
Yeah.
And I think part of the conversations that we had early on about the legislation, I really thought that, I hadn't really looked into it, but I thought that California would actually be California from top to bottom. And to me, that we would be, I think, about in the middle of that. If you took California from top to bottom, I think we would be right there at the middle. I think that's where we would be. But I appreciate this research because now that we're looking at, now that's just the LA and the Bay Area, and 2/3 of it are LA. That's not an accurate depiction of what happens here. So I just feel like I agree with Pat. I think we need to look at this. You know, I'm not saying we need to make any decisions now. I think we need to look at this sooner rather than later because I think this is going to get extremely political as we move forward. It's going to get worse political because of people at the county right now not getting the COLA. And even like what Kathy said, where some have taken it away kind of thing. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I was just trying to find something from Chico. When I was in the community college system, when we wanted to get specifics about Mendocino County, there were, in the economics department over at Chico, they did a report. I don't know if they still do it or not, but they gave specifics about different cost of living for Mendocino County, for Lake County, for different counties. I'm just wondering if there's somebody out there or some reports that somebody's gathered the information that you're talking about, that we could compare what they've gathered to the Western region or the Pacific states or whatever, so that, you know, that might give us an idea of which one better suits Mendocino County. But, you know, you're 2 years into something you decided to do, I'm fine with staying where we are, but I just think there's different ways to look at what we're doing in the future instead of just blindly changing.
You can actually Google Ukiah CPI and you'll come up with a site to look at, but it hasn't been updated, I don't think, in 8 or 9 years, last time I looked.
But that won't help.
James, have you thought more of Patrick's question?
Sorry, I'm not trying to stump you out here.
Or do you want to respond the next month's meeting?
So I had not considered that possibility, but it may be viable to revisit it before the 5 years with the CPI data. I do want to think carefully about that. So I think what might be the best thing for us to do is if I could amend my recommendation. Instead of recommending that we continue to use the Western region, maybe I would recommend that we not pursue the legislative issue that we've discussed in the past, and maybe the board can give direction that I bring this back. We are due to evaluate our work plan next month. I could include a discussion of whether we can reevaluate the region as part of the work plan discussion, if that would make sense and seem logical for the board. I will say, if the board wants to redo the COLA analysis now, something else has to go from the work plan. So, just putting that out there. So, my amended preliminary recommendation is we don't pursue the legislation, and that you direct that I bring back the discussion on the cost of living adjustment as part of our discussion of the work plan at the next board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
A couple resources on that might be Sonoma County's Economic Development Board or Sonoma State. They have lots of time on their hands to think about things like this. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they've done work on this. They do a lot of quality work.
The work's already been done. The template's already been set. Unfortunately, the board knows an economist that they were able to rely upon for the original analysis. You might have been lucky enough to have missed that, but it is on our website.
What's it called?
It is on the actuarial reports and experience studies page, and it's called the Determining the Appropriate Region for Cost of Living Adjustments for Mendocino County Employees Retirement Association, an Empirical Approach.
February 2017.
Yes, ma'am.
All
And
right.
you've got to be able to do all the calculations that,
For some serious math.
equation that.
Whoa.
The accountant's probably going to geek out on it.
Economists speak.
Is that empirical with an I or an E?
Oh my God.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, any public comment on this item? Sorry. Okay, so then we're on to the administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustees, you have the administrator's report there. Form 700s are due. If you have not already gotten into Judy, please do so quickly. The Sacker Spring Conference is rapidly approaching. We do have some rooms held. If you are interested in attending, please let Judy know. If you have already advised her that you're interested, thank you. And I included some information here about the plans, our future plans in the investment program space. I realized this morning that I did not mention in here, we have a presentation scheduled for next month. As part of working towards the investment consultant RFP, one of the things that I wanted to provide to the board is some education about the investment consulting space and what that space looks like and what some of the options and issues are there. I have scheduled the CIO from Sarah, Jim Failer, to come up and give the board a presentation next month about that space, kind of what the spectrum of services are available to the board and what that looks like and what he sees in the industry as kind of trends and things that are taking place. So I won't
Interesting.
beleaguer everything we've written here, but there's a lot of other work that we're doing in the investment space right now. So
I've noticed it seems like an increasing number of emails that I'm getting from people, third-party people out there who want to approach me or approach the board to be our, consultant. I don't know if other people are noticing that.
our investment consultant or investment managers?
Well, I guess mostly the investment managers, yeah.
Okay. I am perfectly comfortable. So I get those as well. I get calls and emails, and my standard response is I don't take meetings with people with vendors with whom we do not have a current relationship. If you are in the investment management space, you need to make sure that our investment consultant is aware of you. So call Callan. And I just shut the door on all of them that way. Trustees can obviously send anyone to me. Not that I'm going to meet with them, but you can tell them, contact the administrator, and I'll handle it from there if you prefer. So I get plenty of calls. I'm going to be in the Ukiah area. No, you're not. No one finds themselves in the Ukiah area. You're coming to the bay. You're coming to the bay and you think it's close enough.
Right.
And then if I say yes, you're going to get out your Google Map and go, 2 hours. So tell them to go to Callan, delete the emails, Sometimes I just delete them.
No, you got it.
If I respond,
That
it's,
happens
I
to us a
don't
lot.
meet with you, go to Calvin. So,
Okay, thanks for that update. Any other comments, any public comments on the administrator report? Okay. Well, I guess we're, any general board member discussion?
actually, before we get there, Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I guess as part of my wrap-up on my report, next month, when we see the work plan, you'll, because of the decisions that the board just took, the 2019 legislation project is going to go away. Just want to make sure, make very clear that everyone, because we talked about two different things, had no interest in appoint the alternate, and then the board voted to not pursue the COLA legislation, so that project will go away. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Should give you lots of extra time.
There it goes right there.
Any general board member discussion?
Jeff, I want to ask, Sonoma County with no COLA, how, is it something that existed before and has been abolished? Do retirees, they're in a situation where they've got to make whatever they got when they retired stretch if they live another 25 years?
So I don't think anybody from Sonoma County will be watching this videotape. So, as I understand the history, the deal was, informally as it may have been, that there will be no COLA, and in return, the retirees will get health care at 85% of the lowest cost plan. And when that changed, the retirees brought a lawsuit. And they weren't successful, but they did reach an agreement. They had a settlement agreement. I don't even recall the specifics of it. So there was definitely frustration from the retirees. What has been discussed, and I don't know if it's still something on the table, was the idea of a purchasing power COLA for the retirees who didn't get 3% at 60 when that changed, I don't know, 2005 or 3. So the folks who retired before that, to try to give them some type of a COLA because they've really lagged. And now the healthcare, what we get for healthcare now is, I should know this, especially because I'm getting close to retirement,
It's like
but I think it's $500
Yeah.
bucks a month.
My sister gets it.
And that's what you get, which is a lot less than 85% of the lowest cost plan. So that's the story as I understand it.
So with that though too, one of the big differences is here, employees pay into that COLA. And that's what I'm curious, like even about yours in Colorado, did you ever pay into that as an employee? And I think that's the
That
big
is a
difference.
significant.
That's a big difference with the COLAs is it's a vested right here because county employees pay into that.
It's a separate line item on our.
Yeah, I mean, it comes out, so it's not like it was like the retiree health here where nobody ever paid into it and it was just something that was given. The employees prior to PEPRA, they pay into that. So it's
Based on getting a 3% every year.
up to 3%.
Which we haven't always done.
Right.
James? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other facet of the difference between Mendocino County and Sonoma County is the level of benefits. Our system for legacy members, so the pre-PEPRA members in the general space, is designed as a 2 at 57. So the formula for determining a benefit is final average salary times years of service times a multiplier. If you retire at age 57, your multiplier is 2%. So our system is designed as a 2 at 57 for legacy members. For the PEPRA members, it's a 2 at 62 system. So the multiplier was reduced for the PEPRA members here. In Sonoma County, their legacy members are a 3 at 60.
Wow.
So
Well, that's what I was mentioning, and that's why they're looking at a purchasing power COLA for the folks who are pre-3%.
Yeah, wow.
it's a
Which was two-
significantly
is it 2 at
higher
60 or something?
benefit. Their PEPRA is now, I think is it 2 at 62? It may be 2 at 62 for PEPRA members in Sonoma County, so.
But in Mendocino County, they all ramp up, so you said 2 at 57, but if a retiree retires at a later age, they get a higher.
It does increase, yes. For the legacy members, the highest the number gets is 2.6 something, I believe.
And that's at what age, like?
For legacy members, it's at age 62 that that the multiplier maxes out.
Which is still a fairly young retirement age, by most standards.
And that's why if there's no COLA, I mean, you really have to think about it, because if you retire at 50 or 60, you could be 80 or 90, and it's not gonna change.
And for the PEPRA employees, if they retire at age 67, it's a multiplier of 2.5, and that's where it maxes out, I believe.
Sounds
But for the PEPRA employees in Mendocino County, there is no COLA.
correct.
Yeah, and someday that's gonna, like, it's same as the insurance. The insurance, all of a sudden, that's when the insurance started, everybody started looking at that going, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
We're paying, at that point, I forget what the number of employees were that we're not gonna get retiree health, but they were, yet, the system was paying for it, so at some point, it's,
So I would point out that this is also why the state of California is looking at total compensation when they look at labor contracts, because, for example, we just talked about some differences between the Sonoma County and the Mendocino County retirement plans, and each agency has multiple retirement plans, whether legacy or PEPRA. And but it's also true that other public agencies, all public agencies, have a menu of other benefits that are not matching up precisely one to the other. So, for example, the city of Ukiah, their employees are enrolled in CalPERS, and they pick different CalPERS plans, but they're not also dual enrolled in Social Security, whereas Mendocino County employees are also dual enrolled in Social Security. So the employee of Mendocino County has, 6 3/4 deducted from their salary, but so the employer is also contributing that. And Social Security is a significant retirement benefit with a national urban CPI applied to it. Again, City of Ukiah employees are not enrolled in Social Security. So, and as you know, Social Security is currently based on your highest 35 years of contribution. So if someone worked with the City of Ukiah for 20 years, they're gonna miss out on, they're not gonna have 35 years of contribution to Social Security. And and Napa County, I also learned, is not in Social Security. So it's not like there's an insignificant number of agencies out there. I originally thought it was only school teachers that were harmed by not being enrolled in Social Security. Actually, there's a significant number of local government agencies that we would compare ourselves to that are not also enrolled in Social Security. So again, I think, if you really want to talk about woe is me, we're a Mendocino County employee, we're undercompensated, I think you really need to look at the entire menu of benefits and compare that to the entire menu of benefits for the other agency that you're comparing yourself to.
but there again, they don't pay into Social Security, right? If they don't get it, they don't pay into it?
No.
And so that's what, that's the thing is, for employees, and especially young employees, there's a lot coming out of your check when you're paying into Social Security, you're paying into retirement, so they're not paying into Social Security, right?
But if Social Security is, if it replaced 25, 35% of your paycheck upon retirement, and you're not getting most of that if you're a public agency employee that's not enrolled in Social Security, that's a significant drop in your retirement.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
So I think in the end, I know that MTA employees are not enrolled in Social Security. So I think it's a significant benefit of Mendocino County employees that they are also dual enrolled in Social Security.
Yeah, but where would those employees be if they'd taken that Social Security contribution and put it in their own IRA? So where would they be at retirement age had they funded their own retirements?
Well, they would, but again, they would be contributing, but not their employer. So they'd be half of the total amount that's going to Social Security. So you're saying that they contributed that 6 3/4 into IRA?
Yeah, but they don't have a choice either.
They got a lot
They don't
better
have-
rate of return than Social Security getting on.
But again, Social Security's got the contribution from the employer and the employee going.
And I think it is an important point too, that it is hard when you try to match up all the different agencies,
Yeah.
that you do have to dig deeper, like even in Mendocino, you know, post-Pepra management as a kind of a COLA replacement type, is my understanding, they get a match on deferred comp. But post-Pepra regular employees don't get a match on deferred comp. So, you know, hopefully in the future, you know, if people paid into deferred comp, my understanding was that that would help alleviate any, you know, concern from not getting the COLA. But yeah, it is, I think it is really hard. You have to dig really deep into all the different contracts to understand.
Right, and I absolutely agree with you, and the insurance is a big thing that's really gonna start coming out now when everybody's gotta report it on their balance sheets, the retiree health. It's gonna be huge over the next 2 years. Watch all those numbers come out. It's not gonna come out here, because we don't have it, we're zero, but it's gonna come out in other counties, so it's, yeah, big difference. Big difference that we do have a COLA, Sonoma County doesn't. That's huge. I mean, it's a huge benefit, but it was paid in for, you know, it was something that we paid into.
And also, your COLA is compounded. CalSTRS as a 2% COLA, fee simple, based on the day you retired.
Wow.
So it doesn't grow. I mean, I have a PERS, very small PERS, and my STRS. And my PERS is growing so much faster because it's compounded. And no health care. So, but the one thing that this discussion brings up for me is the fact that our retirees, when they start out, need to realize how important it is to put money into the deferred comp or what ours was a 403B. I don't know where I would be if I had not paid in early and let it compound. So it's I think there's an education factor, because young people tend to look at the bottom line, what they take home in their paycheck. Whereas a small amount invested early is going to make a huge difference when they're ancient. Like me.
You know, I think Jerry makes a really good point. And one of the speakers at Callan conference was talking about how to, what were they, social economists, talking about how people perceive themselves tomorrow or how they perceive themselves 30 years from now. And it was basically, how do you get people to think about their future and invest in their own future? And for that group, it had a different meaning, I think. But for us, I think, you know, one of the best things we can do for our members is to educate them on the benefits of either having their own IRA or investing in other supplements to our plans that we may or may not have. And that would be a real service to our members to help them prepare for their own retirement early.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To that point, we do, as part of our communication effort with our members, we do have a quarterly seminar, a Retirement 101 seminar that we produce and make it available county-wide. It's not always getting to the court employees that this is available, but we're working on that. Something new we've added to that is we have, the county has 2 providers in the deferred comp space, Mass Mutual and Voya as a contractor for CalPERS. And we now have both of the representatives from both of those plans come and do a short talk right after I talk through our retirement benefits. And I am encouraging, through my talk, people to start saving in their deferred comp if they're not already. And if they are, to increase what they're saving. So we are making efforts in that arena. And I agree, it is important. We are doing what we can with some degree of, without going beyond what I think we can do in that
And
space.
5 years ago, when I pointed out that the fees were excessive for, at the time, 3 contractors, only took the county 2 years, but 2 years later, the county put out an RFP, and we ended up selecting a different contractor, and one of the 3 remaining contractors stayed, and coincidentally, the 3 remaining contractors all lowered their fees by 1%.
Good.
Or in other words, they almost cut in half their fees. And of course, the Voya CalPERS contractor is even less. And so all the employees who do have money in those plans are gonna get to keep more of that money because they're not paying all those excessive fees.
That's a huge service that you did, yeah.
Now, do they set up IRAs for them, is that what they do?
It's under the 457 law, so it's
like a
the 401k equivalent.
Oh, really?
So with the CalPERS/Voya plan, you can either pick one of their sort of standard plans, mutual fund
So
plans.
they're individual 401ks
No,
or is
no, it's a
part of
457,
457?
They're
like-
very, very similar, but
but
But they're not.
you have a
self-directed.
menu of investment choices,
Uh-huh.
not the universe.
Well, unless someone picks, they actually have a contract through Charles Schwab, I believe. I don't know if anybody's actually using it, but I mean, there's this reduced fee through Charles Schwab where you could actually pick a specific stock if you really wanted to. I don't know if anybody's doing it, but it's easier just to pick a plan. And some people are, I'm sure, sticking with that remaining company because they had one unique plan within it, which was a guaranteed 4%
4%.
with no fees. So for some people, that's what they wanted, and so we kept that plan.
It's a great option for anyone at or near retirement, a guaranteed 4% with no fees.
Because they can keep that as long as a retiree, as long as they had that plan prior to retirement, they can keep it until they die.
Wow.
It's a 0.5% at the bank.
The current provider inherited that and they really don't like it, but they're stuck with it.
Yeah, right.
So,
So be grateful for some of these wonderful COLAs that are compounded. I mean, that's a wonderful benefit. And it's not gonna happen. I'm afraid it's going away more and more and more.
Just a sideline to what you're saying and start thinking about this. On the 3rd Tuesday of every month, my Rotary Club has a project. We help the Redwood Empire Food Bank deliver food to seniors, low-income seniors. And we have about a half a dozen low-income apartment complexes around here, Autumn Leaves, Walnut Village, that kind of thing. In order to qualify to get into there and to get on this program, you have to be age 60 and make under $1,260 a month.
Boy,
I can't even imagine.
yeah, wow.
I mean, my wife had to get rid of all of our dogs and cats and everything before. I cannot imagine people living on that.
Yeah.
And you
You-
don't think to start, nobody thinks of starting early and saving on their, for their retirement. You just don't do
Well,
it.
yeah, it's too late by the time they get to over 60,
Yeah.
70, 80, it's too late. It's as good as it gets, yeah.
One other piece that teachers have is if you qualify for Social Security because you earned it on your own, there's a dollar for dollar write-off until most of us get none of it. Whether we're, the surviving spouse or if we had our own 40 quarters, not.
I get
in-
$186.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Now, does
That's
that-
186 more than
Is-
I got.
Does that happen everywhere or just with the teachers?
17 states
Yeah.
negotiated away, apparently, their Social Security benefit way back when a spouse who was teaching was a frill and didn't really need that Social Security to back it up.
So that only affects if you're in
Yes,
education?
yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
And what did you
Teacher.
get in return?
Nothing.
I think this also applies in California, University of California, and CSU employees as well, and community
Does
college
it?
employees.
I knew, community college is CalSTRS, so I knew it was in community college.
You got to keep the
That's what my
6.75%
mother-in-law, she got a small position.
that you were contributing.
Now it's like
Social Security.
$181.
You got to opt out.
In our case, our retirement is adjusted because we have Social Security. So our contributions to our retirement plan are less than they would be if we didn't have Social Security. And our benefit from the retirement is less than it would be if we didn't have it. And conversely, it doesn't affect our social security by having the retirement. In some cases, I've heard of people who, it is, their social security is adjusted because they have the monthly retirement. In our case, it's our retirement that's reduced.
Mine, yeah, well, they take a chunk out of my social security.
So,
The big thing is, I think that we need to be educating that this retirement is a three-legged stool. And Social Security, your pension, and what you've saved. And if you're a teacher, on top of getting such big salaries, you get one leg of the stool. If you don't save, that's a real rickety stool. So it's,
Craig?
I think James deserves a lot of credit. The monthly email is a fantastic platform. I can't say for certain how many people read it and really delve into it, which is a separate issue that we're touching on as far as the education. But I mean, the timing is great. I get questions about what's pensionable and what's not, and lo and behold, there's an article a week later, and I'm able to just say, hey, take a look, read this. So that's great. The Pension 101, I beg my members to go to that, and I try to encourage the younger guys just to get an understanding. It may seem that it's 25 years away, but get an understanding of how the system works and what the issues are. And I don't know how successful my efforts are, but it's an ongoing process. One other minor point, I talked to the auditor's office about a year ago just to ask how many people at the sheriff's office participated in deferred comp. And at that time, it was 42%, which on the one hand surprised me. Frankly, I thought it would be less, so it was a pleasant surprise. But that still tells me that there's 60% out there that that aren't. And my guess is that they're probably skewed towards the younger members in general. So there's it's a never-ending process, but the numbers aren't as bad depending on your perspective. 42% I thought was actually a pretty good number, and I would guess that that's probably similar.
you think that's probably the case throughout the system?
I would imagine.
I think, the number I think I heard, again, was pretty, I've had out-of-date numbers 2-3 years ago, but I think it was a little less than 400, and there's 1,100 or so employees. So probably in some work units, there's going to be very little participation, like maybe eligibility workers, people who just don't make that much money. I mean,
Right.
And then other work units or departments, there's going to be a higher participation level. I don't know, maybe the treasurer's office not dealing with pay, but maybe just because you guys are, in theory, thinking about money.
Because money's our life.
Yeah.
Might be a higher percent participation. So are we, go ahead.
I just wanted to give a little Sackers legislative update. AB 2085, the retirement system surviving spouse. We voted on that at the last Sackers conference, and though a lot of systems voted for it, it wasn't unanimous. And so now, first of all, summary is that the California Employees Retirement Law requires, after a member's death, any retirement allowance earned but not yet paid to the member to be paid to the member's designated beneficiary. Current law authorizes the surviving spouse of a member who did not designate a beneficiary prior to death to file with the board as specified to be deemed the beneficiary. This bill would define surviving spouse. It's a definition of what a surviving spouse is for the purpose of Cyril as a person legally married to the member who is neither divorced nor legally separated at the time of the member's death and who meets other relevant requirements as specified. So more systems voted to support in favor of it, but because it wasn't unanimous, just like in the last few days, Los Angeles County Retirement System is opposing this. And so there's, there are pros and cons. Some of the systems think that it should be up to each retirement board, that it's on a case-by-case basis. And then this was introduced by Ventura County, and I think the intent was to have an overall, ruling on it where it's not based on case law. And am I right? Is that what you're?
I haven't looked at this in a while, and I thought that there was a concern that there was a way to kind of trick the system, and they were trying to stop the trick of kind of selling your benefit, the continuance piece.
Well, there are two cases now. One is, I think where this legislation came from, or it was initiated, was where there was a couple, and the husband was, terminally ill, and they didn't want to protect their assets. The couple separated, but they still lived in the same house, and so on and so forth. So there was a decision that, or a question of, well, is the spouse still, is she eligible for to being the beneficiary if they're separated? So that's, I think.
That seems like almost the opposite of what I had thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is still a marriage, and they were doing it for other reasons, and they shouldn't lose the benefit because of it. I thought it was the opposite
Well,
reason.
but that isn't, that's
No, I
a law,
understand.
that's not right.
Right.
to do. So anyway, I just wanted to share that there's a controversy, and we still don't know what's happening with that, because SACRS didn't unanimously support this AB 2085, so possibly it won't go forward. We don't know.
Will Ventura try to take it on their own?
Possibly, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah. So it's up in the air right now. I just wanted to give you an update.
Mhm.
Good.
Any other board member reports? Okay, well then we're adjourned at 9:45.
All righty.
Ted,
Take a
where
break,
are you?
guys.
Wow.
That's the contract for.